So, ladies and gentlemen, China thought for the longest time that it can, believe and continue to browbeat India because Hindi Chini Bhai Bhai is what it has heard for the longest time. Till Narendra Modi comes into the scene and he ensures that our forces are not pulling back, till we also ensure that China and its own policies continue to make China isolated on the world stage. What otherwise explains this massive pullback that you have seen by China vis-a-vis the LAC? Remember, 4 years after you've seen that Galwan clashes, India making it very clear. The second question, does resumption of patrolling actually mean that we'll be going back to the pre-2020 arrangement, or there is a new standard operating procedure that has been agreed to? All this, remember, are details that are expected in the next few hours as you're looking at that big development that has been announced by New Delhi. And this is hours before the Prime Minister also embarks to Kazan for the big BRICS summit. Does that LAC truce also pave a way for a Modi and a Xi bilateral? Will that happen? If that happens, that's going to be really, really big. It has not happened for the longest time, ever since you've seen those clashes. So in case that happens, is this a build-up to that big meeting, that big dialogue between the two world leaders? This brings us to our next big question again. That's going to go up on your screens. Strong India-Russia ties to a bleeding economy, remember, back home. China is looking at massive problems vis-a-vis its own economy. What really are the reasons? What really have been the contributing factors that have led and pushed China into a corner that it has been forced to revise its stand? Again, something you will find out during the course of this entire show. And now, a question also when it comes to domestic politics. Has the Prime Minister, ladies and gentlemen, already managed to turn the tables on the entire opposition, particularly Rahul Gandhi? Because Rahul Gandhi, for the longest time, remember, has been spreading a lot of false narratives, not even wanting to believe what the forces said. He continued to say कि हमारा ज़मीन चली गई है. He continued to say that this is a weak Narendra Modi जो आंख भी नहीं दिखा पा रहे. Why is Rahul Gandhi today quiet? We'll ask that question also to our panel of guests. But first up, I want you to take a moment to listen in to what we've heard from New Delhi on this massive disengagement, what this means, what are going to be the broader contours, just in the next 30 seconds before we open this up to our panel of guests.
Bilateral meetings on the sidelines, and in particular possible bilateral meeting between the Prime Minister and the President of China. Some of these questions are particularly timely and in a sense also appropriate that I have the opportunity now to share with you. I can share with you that over the last several weeks, Indian and Chinese diplomatic and military negotiators have been in close contact with each other in a variety of forums. And as a result of these discussions, agreement has been arrived at on patrolling arrangements along the line of actual control in the India-China border areas, leading to disengagement and a resolution of the issues that had arisen in these areas in 2020. And we will be taking the next steps on this.
So what really does this mean? Is this durable? Can we trust China enough? I think these are other obvious questions that we will find answers to at the end of this conversation. It's a pleasure to have Brahma Chalani, who's a strategic affairs expert, on the show, along with Dr. Swasti Roy, who's an associate fellow at the MPIDSA. Good evening to both of you. And also for the politics of this, we also have Pradeep Mahar, who's a political analyst, along with Dr. Nikul Patel, who also leans towards the Congress. Before we get the netas on board, Brahma Chalani and Dr. Swasti Rao, let's begin by asking you, first up to you, Brahma Chalani, how do you see what has happened so far? How important this is? Can China really be trusted?
The answer is no, because there were 18 meetings between Xi Jinping and Modi over 5 years. And these meetings, instead of giving pause to Xi Jinping over his expansionist designs, only encouraged him to make those encroachments in April 2020. The present border crisis is a result of those encroachments. Now, what has been achieved has not been a deal to end the standoff. I think Xi Jinping and his regime were surprised by the robust response, the robust military response India mounted following its discovery of the Chinese encroachments. And I think Xi Jinping clearly miscalculated. He thought that he could present those encroachments as a fait accompli to India. Instead, India mounted a full-fledged response by more than matching the number of Chinese troops along the frontier. But today, what has been announced is not a deal to end that standoff. That standoff is now in its fifth year. What has been announced is a patrolling arrangement. The irony is this: the standoff and the encroachments that preceded the standoff resulted from China's violation of bilateral border management agreements with India. Those bilateral agreements incorporated patrolling issues. Each side was obligated not to mass forces along the frontier. Each side was also obligated not to do certain things in close proximity to the line of actual control. So the issue that that we face today is that given the fact that one side, China, had already violated solemn binding bilateral agreements with India, so having a patrolling arrangement, an arrangement, not an agreement, not a pact, not a formal pact, but an arrangement, torn off a deal to end the standoff, how consequential is this? It raises that question.
Yes, and as we were having this conversation, Swasti, there is this quote that has just come in from the External Affairs Minister, his very first response post this announcement. Now, he goes on to say that on India, China, if you look at it, we are the only two countries with more than 1 billion people. We have a certain civilizational history. Today, we are on a track of economic recovery or rejuvenation. Then he continues to say that there is a challenge. We are neighbors and we do have an unresolved boundary issue. He says both countries have been rising, and when you have two large neighboring countries rising together, it is not easy. He says our capabilities, our influence and our ambitions will change. Both of us will naturally want to be bigger, more visible and more effective in the world. The big issue, he says, Swasti, for us is how to achieve equilibrium in our relationship. Does this also give away why China decided to do this right now? When it has its eyes set on Taiwan, it has an economy that is bleeding right now. It has largely gotten isolated. You're looking at significant relationship that India has with Russia. Does all this also bother Xi Jinping?
Hi, good evening to you, Deepthi. And I largely agree with what Dr. Chelani just said, which is that no, we should not be trusting China. Every single time that we have gone out of our way to trust China, to honor the kind of arrangements we have had, we have actually been unfortunately and unceremoniously stabbed in the back. So the erosion of strategic trust is pretty much there. What has happened yesterday, of course, is of significance, which is that, today, which is of course of significance, which is that there has been this arrangement that now there will be a patrolling, arrangement. And if you go into the details of it, of course, Depsang has always been a bit of an issue. And then they have said that, yeah, we are going to sort of, start patrolling there, and also Demchok. But at the same time, there has not really been any de-escalation of sorts, right? Apart from the fact that in the winters, anyway, there is a certain amount of reduction of troops from both sides, which is a very regular thing. But let's not celebrate it too much, because the thing is that with China, if you understand China, it's always about one step forward and two steps backward. And this is something that has been going on. So that's the first part. The other thing, Deepthi, is that I hope you remember just 2 days ago, there were videos and so much news and so much, rubric coming from, for example, what Mr. Xi Jinping did when he went to, he was inspecting a brigade of the Chinese People's Liberation Army rocket force. This is just, today we are on Monday. Today it is a Monday, and just I think Thursday or Friday last week he had gone there. And then he has urged the country's strategic missile troops to strengthen their deterrence, combat capabilities, and all of that. So he's obviously off, in the know-how that his country's economy is not doing well. And with all the authoritarian styling of, running their regimes, that whenever the country is in any trouble or close to any trouble, the easiest thing is to whip up nationalism on its borders borders, or it's expansionism. So I would be very, very careful and take it with a pinch of salt. That's the second point. The third is that let's also remember that there is a BRICS summit starting very soon in Kazan. And we definitely know that we might see a Modi-Xi meeting on the BRICS sidelines. You've already mentioned that when it comes to BRICS, and of course, China has also seen that India has been steadfast in its multi-alignment. So on the one hand, it does close to the West. This one has not come at the cost of being close to Russia. And that, of course, is something I'm not sure China would be liking, because China ideally would have liked, to have Russia all to itself, but that is really not happening. So like, someone said, and very rightfully so, which is that India and Russia remain each other's room for maneuver. And I think that's something which is important to note. And the thing is that what has happened today seems to me like a concession to get, the two leaders like Prime Minister Modi and Xi Jinping to actually meet. And let's see, and to have some kind of a dialogue around it. But other than that, I would not be so naive. And I would say that strategic realism has to be the order of the day, especially when it comes to China. Every single time we have tried to take a step forward, they have given a perception of taking the same step forward, but then in reality, it has always been a kind of a backstabbing. So I completely agree with Professor Chalani.
I think we've had some very interesting insights by both Brahmachalani and Dr. Swasti Rao, but there is also a good amount of politics that domestically has played out. I'm not sure whether the opposition or how many leaders in the opposition even understand what is the China issue, what really are the flashpoints, what are different fingers, but they've fought about this, no, Nicole? All of you have fought about this because you believe that this was a handle to attack Narendra Modi. This is a mazboot Narendra Modi, or you believe this is still a majboor Narendra Modi, Nicole?
See, since 2014, when we see international relations with China, definitely Pradhan Mantri wants to say that make in India and we want to boycott China. Now, when it comes to international border, we have found so many conflicts, whether it was so many fingers at Galwan Ghati, or whether it was Doklam, or whether it was Northeast. Everywhere it was found that the encroachment by Chinese Liberation Army has been found and it's been reported. Even the foreign minister had said that...
Nicole, by whom? Again, you fall in the same trap. The trap of fake narratives.
No, it's not like that.
Again and again. No, how many times? How many times will you get, will you repeat the same lies? You will be called out, Nicole. Wait, do you welcome what has happened vis-a-vis the LAC, Nicole? Or you will still say that China has taken away our land, the Prime Minister has lied on Chinese incursions into India's land also, is what Rahul Gandhi has said.
It is the opposition, Rahul Gandhi, continuously focusing and telling the government, and that is why the initiatives have been done after 11 long years.
So you're saying Rahul Gandhi should be credited for this disengagement?
Yeah, definitely, why not? Rahul Gandhi, Congress, opposition, that is why after 11 years it has happened.
ठीक है, पहले आप कहते हैं लैंड ले लिया, अब लैंड लिया है नहीं लिया है निकुल?
नहीं दिया वो लैंड.
अच्छा नहीं लिया है ना, ये तो मान गए आप कि नहीं लिया है.
नहीं वो लैंड encroachment है अभी.
See, this is what happens. You berate our forces, you call down our forces, you berate the country only because you see a political motive. Nicole, wait. Let me also get in Pradeep for his very first response here. Now, Pradeep, how significant this is, and as both Brahmachalani and Dr. Swasti Rao has said, we need to be very, very cautious when it comes to Beijing, because clearly it has a lot of other problems because of which it might, for the moment decided to buy peace. But that does not mean that we get our guard down.
Look, we definitely need to be very cautious. As far as the government is concerned, they have taken several steps. As far as China strategy is concerned, we have to look them eye to eye. And this is what is happening. India tested ICBM. This is a big show throughout the world that, we are capable of fighting with China. Nuclear power submarines are there. And so many Make in India projects are going on. Still, we are the biggest importer of arms and ammunitions in the world. And on top of that, India has been announced to be the fourth largest, military power in the world. So this shows that we are ready for everything. We are ready to fight. And when this happens, definitely the China has to look down because they do not want to fight with a strong opposition. Because if they are going to fight with a country like
But
India,
you know, Pradeep, I just have a little point, and I think both Brahmachalani and Dr. Swasti Rao would agree that the government took a long time to even accept that there is a problem. You know, again, I think because you have seen a lot of domestic politics that has played out into this, Pradeep, but you know, is the government of the day, was it also waiting, you know, to figure out how to solve this, perhaps looking for an opportune time? And now when you have that time, it kind of helps, you know, to sell that entire story that, yes, this is a weak, a weak China right now, looking at a strong India. And that is why it decided to buy peace. So you recognize there was a problem?
No, look, actually, using the word like we were waiting, that will be like showing our desperation. So as far as government was concerned, government was not desperate. They were doing their job. They knew what is going to happen, how to handle China. That was very well known to everybody.
Okay.
And whenever you are talking to an enemy, country like China, you have to understand that you have to show yourself to be strong. No matter what Rahul Gandhi
says. Is China an enemy? Is China an enemy? You just called China an enemy.
No, after the Galwan issue, we had been considering them to be the enemy. Definitely, we have some bilateral relations as well. Economic tie-ups and, economy export imports are going on. But still, we have to understand that we are sharing a border and we had border disputes. And
okay, Pradeep ji, with your permission, because I just have limited time, I want to give, just one minute to both Swasti and Brahmachalani here for their concluding remarks. Now, Brahmachalani, what could happen between, now and perhaps the next few days if there is this big bilateral that does take place between Narendra Modi and Xi Jinping? What is it that you would be looking at? What could be the deliverables?
Well, first, looking at the broader picture, China and India together represent more than 1/3 of the global population. It makes sense for them to try and find ways to peacefully coexist.
Okay.
But it's important to remember that China and India became neighbors only after the Chinese Communist Party occupied Tibet in 1951. So it was China that imposed itself as India's neighbor.
Okay.
And since that imposition on India, the Chinese Communist Party has become a growing challenge for India in terms of its expansionism. Now, Xi Jinping and Modi are obviously going to meet on the sidelines of the BRICS summit in Kazan. That's the reason why this patrolling arrangement has been announced today.
Yes.
And the summit begins actually tomorrow.
Yes.
The issue is that the fact that for over 5 years, Xi Jinping and Narendra Modi met multiple times, 18 times,
correct,
and yet Xi Jinping felt emboldened to make those encroachments, suggests that this relationship is going to be quite competitive, quite tense, and we should not believe, as is being presented in the media, that this patrolling arrangement is a breakthrough. It's
all right. So with your permission, I want to give the last just 10 seconds to Swasti. We need to conclude. Swasti.
Yes, so very quickly, I think the overall decision on whatever proper disengagement or de-escalation would happen, hopefully, I think that is going to be determined by the decisions taken in what is expected to be a bilateral meeting. So I think we should keep our eyes and ears open to that. But like I said, that China is an expert of doublespeak, and strategic realism is what we really require to look through Chinese real intentions.
All right. So can Hindi Chini really be bhai? I'm not sure, but we'll continue to track that story. Swasti and all gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us. We'll keep our eyes focused on what happens next. We head into a quick break. On the other side, back with more.